At 25 years old, I gave birth to a son for the heir of New York's high society. Our statuses were mismatched. He and I had no future, so I took the money and resources the Miller mansion offered me and left him. Until 5 years later, during a break on set, a little boy who was a carbon copy of Ryan Miller found me. The boy pouted, looking both aggrieved and proud. "My father is Ryan Miller," the boy said. "You are my mother." I looked at the boy and casually acknowledged him with a, The boy hurriedly pulled a stack of cash from his backpack, his eyes filled with pleading. "I'm hiring you for one day to attend my parent-teacher conference, okay?" I watched the boy clutching the stack of cash, frozen for a moment. I pursed my lips and pushed the stack of money back. "I don't need your money." The boy's eyes reddened. He lowered his head, his voice getting smaller and smaller. "Grandma said you really like money, so I've been saving for a very long time before coming to find you. All the kids at kindergarten say I'm a bastard child without a mother. Every time I tell them I have a mother, my mother is a superstar. They all say I'm a liar. Even if you don't need me anymore, I didn't lie. But they still don't believe me." The boy quietly lowered his head, his small body occasionally hiccuping as he used his sleeve to wipe his tears. I squatted down, lifted the boy's face, and wiped his tears for him. "I won't take your money, but I can go." The boy suddenly looked up, his eyes bright, mixed with disbelief and unconcealed joy. He immediately threw himself into my arms. His little round head burrowed into the crook of my neck as he burst into sobs, as if he had endured immense grievances. I gently patted the boy's back, smoothing his breathing. After the boy had cried enough, he met my eyes. He involuntarily blushed, his gaze somewhat evasive, awkwardly turning his head away, embarrassedly explaining, "I don't like crying. I'm a man. I just couldn't hold it in. That's why I cried." Seeing the boy like this, I smiled and shook my head. "It's okay. I'm not judging you." The boy smiled with pursed lips and grabbed my hand and enthusiastically introduced himself. "My name is William Miller. My home name is Will. You can call me Will." I smiled and smoothed the boy's bangs. "I know." The boy nodded, his round eyes brightening. "You know my name?" I nodded, confirming once more. "I know." The name William was given by Ryan Miller's father, while Will was chosen by me. How could I not know? After speaking, I led the boy to my mobile home. When the two assistants, Olivia and Ava, in the car saw me return with an adorable little boy, their eyes lit up. "Emma, where did you kidnap this boy from?" I squeezed Will's hand and calmly said, "My son." As soon as the words left my mouth, the smiles on their faces immediately froze, suddenly alarmed. "What? Oh my God, we weren't photographed, were we? If this gets photographed, we're done for." Seeing that I said nothing, Will carefully and cautiously tugged up the corner of my shirt. "Am I causing trouble for you?" When these words came out, the two girls who had been worried both showed self-reproach. I smiled and rubbed Will's fluffy little head. "Will isn't trouble." Olivia and Ava also quickly waved their hands. "That's right, we were talking nonsense." Will looked at me, then the two assistants, and set down his little backpack. Kneeling on the floor, he pulled everything out of his backpack. Pajamas, a yellow cartoon umbrella, a water bottle, even a toothbrush and a stack of cash were all laid out on the floor. It turned out the boy had prepared thoroughly before coming to find me. After laying everything out, the boy buried his head in the backpack again. He pulled out 2 cheese sticks and handed them to Olivia and Ava, licking them sweetly. "Sisters, these are for you to eat." Seeing this, the two young assistants' hearts immediately melted and squeaked their thanks in high-pitched voices. "Ah, you're such a sweetheart. I love cheese sticks the most." Hearing this, Will shyly smiled and pulled out a few more from the bag. "Then I'll give you all of Will's too." After finishing up, I took Will back to the hotel. Only after asking thoroughly did I find out. This little guy had put on his backpack early in the morning and called a taxi from Los Angeles to Grand Studio City. The driver had originally planned to call the police, but Will gave too much money, so he took the job. Actually, Will had arrived in the morning, but seeing that I was still busy, he stood with the fan group waiting for me to finish work. He waited like that until evening. Seeing everyone disperse, the boy sneaked to stand in front of the car door waiting for me. The boy devoured his meal. He must have been starving. Watching the boy like this, I felt incredibly distressed, wanting to say something but couldn't find the words. I truly couldn't imagine how a child could have the courage to call a taxi alone from Los Angeles to Grand Studio City. The drive took a solid 3 or 4 hours. I daren't imagine how anxious and uneasy the boy must have been. I couldn't help but choke up. What if you got lost? The boy's mouth was full of rice. He raised his hand to point at the phone watch on his wrist and spoke in a muffled voice. He looked up at me and smiled. I couldn't get lost. When I got in the car, I used my watch to take a picture of the license plate and sent it to Chloe. Plus, I was always on the phone with Chloe using my watch. Not only that, afraid the watch would run out of battery, the boy had even brought a portable charger. The lighter the boy spoke, the worse I felt inside. Planning so thoroughly, this plan to find me, the boy must have been preparing for a very long time. The boy proudly lifted his chin and began chattering about introducing his good friend. Chloe is my desk mate at kindergarten. We're best friends. When I grow up, I'm going to marry her. Hearing this, I laughed through my tears. Next time, if you want to find Mom, you can call Mom, and Mom will come pick you up. I paused, then added, if your dad agrees. The boy quickly nodded and smiled, saying, okay. After eating, I led the boy into the bathroom. Seeing that I was going in too, he clutched his pants, his face red. He stammered for a long time without forming a complete sentence. I knew the boy was embarrassed and helplessly shook my head. Mom won't watch you bathe. Look, body wash, shampoo, and toothpaste too. Can you bathe yourself? The boy quickly nodded. I can. At home I bathe myself. I patted the boy's head and praised him. Good boy. Leaving the bathroom, I took out my phone and opened a chat window I hadn't used in a long time. Will is with me. Shortly after sending the message, the other party replied. I know, the kid already called me on his watch. Seeing this indifferent attitude, my hands trembled with anger. But I had no right to criticize him. When are you coming to pick up Will? Been in meetings lately, no time. Just let the kids stay with you for a couple days. I grit my teeth and took a deep breath. So the child wasn't that important to him after all. Just as I finished typing my accusatory message in the chat box, the bathroom door opened. Will hugged his dirty clothes and pattered over to me. Mom, I'm all clean and fresh now. I deleted the text in the input box and put away my phone. I took the hairdryer and dried the boy's hair. Facing the mirror, he squinted his eyes, his little mouth smiling, sitting on the stool, swinging his little legs, looking extremely content. I smiled and rubbed the boy's fluffy head. After drying his hair, I led the boy to bed and kissed him. All right, time for sleep. Mom's going to brush your teeth and wash her face. The blanket covered more than half his face, revealing only his big, shining eyes as he nodded. When I came out after washing up, the small figure on the bed was happily rolling around with the blanket. Seeing me come out, he obediently lay down properly and even patted the spot next to him. Understandingly, I climbed onto the bed and held the boy in my arms. A child's body felt soft in my arms, but somehow the small body brought me immense satisfaction and happiness. I pulled up the blanket and gently patted Will's back. Patting and patting, the little one in my arms suddenly secretly wept tears. His tiny hands desperately clutched my pajamas, afraid that in the next moment I would disappear. Children fall asleep quickly. After crying in my arms, he fell asleep in no time. Tonight, no matter what, I could not sleep. My thoughts drifted involuntarily to many years ago. When I met Ryan Miller, I was still a third-year student at the Film Academy. I would run myself ragged for a small role, appearing at all kinds of parties. Back then, my agent had pointed out a shortcut for me. He said the company's CEO had taken notice of me and asked if I was willing. Pies don't fall from the sky for no reason. Everyone understood what the prerequisite was. But back then, I was young and full of pride. Of course I wasn't willing to accept it. So I had to endure being secretly blacklisted. I couldn't act in the company's films, and because my contract was still in effect, I couldn't act in other people's films either. But the breach of contract penalty was 5 million yuan. With my family's financial situation, even if we sold our house and everything we owned, we couldn't pay it. They cut off all my escape routes. If I didn't agree, I could only be delayed indefinitely. After all, in their eyes, my youth wasn't worth a penny. Later, I met Ryan Miller. At the time, I was vomiting from drinking in the bathroom, struggling and looking miserable. He handed me a tissue and asked me, "Can't hold on anymore? You can follow me. Everything you want, I can give you." I still refused. He just smiled and stuffed a business card into my palm. "When you've thought it through, you can find me. At least compared to them, I'm young and my appearance isn't bad, right? You won't lose out." The turning point came when my father was injured in a car accident and had to have his leg amputated. The pillar of our family had collapsed. As I was collapsing in tears in the hospital stairwell, that's when I met Ryan Miller again. He quietly lit a cigarette beside me. "Emma Collins, that little bit of pride of yours isn't worth much." Yes, that little bit of pride of mine wasn't worth much. Later, I still followed Ryan Miller. He paid my breach of contract penalty, got me into his friend's entertainment company, and found me the most professional agent in the industry. From then on, I was like a sparrow transforming into a phoenix. Endless announcements, one luxury outfit after another to wear, films by famous directors I could act in by saying the word. Emma Collins during those years could be said to be extremely glorious. When our feelings were intense, I once asked Ryan Miller why he chose me. He laughed arrogantly, saying without any reservation, "I saw your beauty and desired you." Someone like me is used to being domineering. When I set my sights on something, I must have it. A very simple reason. When he set his sights on something, he had to take it. I also understood clearly that someone like Ryan Miller, born in a house in New York, would never be in the same world as me. Each taking what they needed, there was no right or wrong, so I desperately used his influence to climb higher. When love clouded my judgment, I also once fantasized that maybe one day I would be qualified to stand in the same place as him. But the change of circumstances began the day I found out I was pregnant. I happily told Ryan Miller the news, but his brows furrowed tightly. He said, "Emma Collins, there's no way I can give you status. If you want to have the child, go ahead and have it. I'll take responsibility for the child. If you don't want to have it, you can abort it too." One sentence threw me into an ice cellar. I had thought about getting an abortion, but bloodline is a very miraculous thing. No matter what, I couldn't bear to do it. Later, after I gave birth to the child, Ryan's mom came to see me. She told me clearly that I would have no place in Ryan Miller's future. Knowing when to retreat was the wisest choice. She sent my father to the best nursing home abroad and gave me a blank check. Along with the female lead role in a film by a famous director from the Capital Circle, someone like that wouldn't give face to Ryan Miller, but would give face to Ryan's mom. That was also a world I could never break into no matter how hard I tried. Rather than betting on an uncertain future, this success laid before my eyes was truly difficult to refuse. But I didn't agree at all. However, in what I had always considered my salvation, the final fatal blow that knocked me down was the news that Ryan Miller was about to be engaged. He He had never hidden it from me. I asked him, what should I do in the future? That night, he thought all night, but didn't give me an answer. But I already knew his answer. People can love money, but my limits couldn't allow me to become a mistress outside of the bounds of law. So I said goodbye to him, taking everything Ryan's mom had given me and cutting off all ties with Ryan Miller from the past. At that time, Ryan Miller questioned me. Everything you want, I can give you too. Why must you do this? I smiled and told him, you can't give it to me. He fell silent and lowered his head. As soon as I woke up, I saw Will with his eyes wide open, lying obediently in my arms looking at me. Seeing me wake up, the little boy quickly closed his eyes and pretended to sleep. But his eyelashes were trembling. I found it a bit amusing for a moment, so I gently pinched the little boy's small face. Mummy knows you're awake. The little boy shyly nuzzled in my arms, happily wiggling like a little worm. Today was rare. There was no schedule. I took Will to play around Grand Studio City all day. Downstairs at the hotel, a latest model Maybach had been parked there for knows how long. Leaning against the Maybach's door was someone I couldn't be more familiar with. Ryan Miller in a black suit. Seeing us return, he slowly stood up straight and walked towards us. Compared to 5 years ago, now he had quite a bit more of an air of authority. Slightly lowering his head, his sharp gaze swept at Will.
He said casually, "Time to go home." Will pouted, his face full of unwillingness. "I just want to stay with Mom. If Dad's too free, go find your own mom." Ryan Miller was so frustrated he had to laugh, looking up at me. "You see, it's not that I won't come pick him up. He just won't go home with me." I patted Will's shoulder, coaxing. "Tomorrow is Monday. You have to go to school." Will stubbornly shook his head, his eyes glistening with tears, looking unbearably pitiful. Ryan Miller looked at the boy's appearance, let out a light scoff, and was about to say something, but Will pulled him aside to whisper. Ryan Miller raised his eyebrows, looking like it was going in one ear and out the other. In contrast, Will tensed his small face, hands on his hips, his mouth chattering nonstop, as if lecturing someone. Seeing this scene, I couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Ryan Miller wasn't someone with a gentle temperament. That Will could act so spoiled in front of him meant the father-son relationship was still very good. "I already said I want to find Mom. Dad clearly agreed I could stay with Mom for a few days. I'm not going home with Dad. If Dad forces me to go home, I'll tell Grandma that Dad lied to a child, and I'll get Grandpa to beat Dad too. Dad, hurry up and go home. Don't disturb the world of just me and Mom." Ryan Miller bent down slightly. "You can come find her. Why can't I?" Will huffed. "Mom doesn't need Dad anymore. Why would Dad come find Mom?" Ryan Miller choked, grinding his teeth, looking like a rogue, letting out a bitter laugh. "You think if you pretend to be pitiful, she'll cherish you? She doesn't even need me, much less you." Will got angry, shouting that he'd go tell on him, saying he was bullying him. After that, Will pulled me back to the hotel room, locking Ryan Miller outside the door. I watched him hold a grand engagement ceremony with another wealthy young lady, watched them walk arm in arm, attending all sorts of events. Netwinds praised them as a match made in heaven. Later, because of the film Ryan's mom had arranged, I won 3 Best Actress winner trophies in a row, thoroughly establishing my foothold in the industry. Only then did he gradually let go, allowing the little bird to spread its wings and fly freely. Ryan Miller walked in, looking at the small lump bulging under the blanket, and chuckled. He wasn't in a hurry to expose the boy either. Instead, he asked me, "How have you been lately?" I smiled and said, "Pretty good. And you?" He sat down casually. "Not married, not dating, always alone. It's all right." I was a bit speechless. I hadn't even asked. "What about Grace?" He looked up at me, the corners of his mouth showing a barely there smile. "Her? She's probably at some beach abroad, sunbathing with her young boyfriend. She and I, there was never anything. I gave a soft, and then decidedly changed the subject. Take Will home. He has school tomorrow. As soon as those words left my mouth, Will suddenly threw off the blanket, climbed down from the bed with bare feet flailing, and clutched my leg tightly. "Mom, please don't send me away, okay?" I looked at the boy's big, dark eyes, tears threatening to spill. I felt a bit reluctant. "But you have school tomorrow." The boy said nothing, immediately buried his head in my clothes, his small hands fiercely gripping the hem. Ryan Miller looked at the boy's appearance and finally spoke up. "Missing 2 days of kindergarten is fine. Let him follow you." Will looked up, eyes red. "Mom, Will will be very good. I won't disturb Mom's work." I stroked the boy's head, feeling very happy inside. Looking at the scene of loving mother and filial son before him, Ryan Miller shook his head helplessly. "In 2 days, will you still acknowledge this person as your dad?" Will turned his head, thought for a moment, and finally nodded. Will was a sweet-talking child. After following me to the film set for just 1 day, he'd already made friends with all the crew members. When I was acting, the boy would sit obediently next to the director and watch me film. This time, we were shooting a historical drama. The director of this film had collaborated with us several times. He also had a good relationship with the Miller Mansion, so he was particularly tolerant of Will. He'd occasionally tease the boy, "Well, does this director make your mom look good on camera?" Will looked up with his small face, nodding vigorously. "Director, you're so amazing, way better than my grandpa. Every time Grandpa takes photos of Grandma, they look like specters, and he always gets scolded." The director looked at the monitor and laughed heartily. This scene was finished, and I essentially was done with work. After being with the crew for 2 days, the actors working with me all knew I had a 5-year-old son. At first, they were quite surprised, but their acceptance came quickly. Plus, Will was adorable. During every break on set, everyone loved to tease the boy. When Ryan Miller came to pick up Will, the male lead of the film, Julian Cross, was holding Will, teasing the little boy. "Uncle is playing your mother's husband in the film. Shouldn't you also call Uncle Daddy?" Will hugged Julian Cross's neck, thinking, "Uncle Julian, although you're younger than my dad and more handsome than my dad, and you buy me cheese to eat, but if I call you Daddy, my dad will be jealous, and if Daddy cries, there's no one to comfort him. He'd be so pitiful." Hearing Will's praise, Julian Cross laughed heartily. "All right, even if you don't call me Daddy, Uncle will still buy you cheese." As soon as the words ended, Will heard Ryan Miller calling him. "William Miller, come here." Not having seen his dad for 2 or 3 days, he did miss him a little after all. Hearing Ryan Miller call, he quickly scrambled down from Julian Cross, hugging Ryan Miller's thigh. Ryan Miller lowered his head to look at Will, grinding his teeth in frustration. "Your dad is old. Your dad isn't as handsome as anyone." Will giggled, then lowered his head and mumbled quietly, "That's exactly right." Ryan Miller tucked the boy under his arm and lifted him up with one hand. Walking toward Julian Cross, he extended a hand. "Hello, Ryan Miller. I'm Emma Collins's baby's father." Julian Cross smiled. "Hello, Julian Cross." When I came out from the director's tent, it just so happened to see the 2 men shaking hands, not letting go for quite a while. After all, I wasn't a young girl anymore. I could still recognize this atmosphere of drawn swords. I walked forward with a sigh, looking at Ryan Miller. "What are you doing?" The corner of his mouth lifted slightly, looking back at Julian Cross, his gaze somewhat provocative. "Just saying hello." Me. Knowing Ryan Miller would come pick up Will today, I had already placed the boy's things in the mobile home vehicle. Will hugged his little backpack, pouting, his face full of reluctance. Then, remembering something, he counted on his fingers and his expression relaxed a bit. "The day after tomorrow is Friday, Mom. Can Will come find you again?" I could only smile helplessly, pinching the boy's soft cheeks. "Anytime, but you can't go by yourself. You can text me, and I'll have someone come pick you up."
After hearing this, Will swept away his earlier gloom, his face blooming with a bright smile. Pulling on Ryan Miller's sleeve, he cheered happily. "Let's go, Dad!" As soon as they got in the car, Ryan Miller began interrogating Will. "That Uncle Julian..." Before he could finish, Will continued, "Uncle Julian likes Mom." Ryan Miller's hand on the steering wheel tightened, and he huffed irritably. He knew it. Who would trick someone else's son into calling them daddy after just meeting? Sure enough, plotting to cause trouble. Thinking again, he asked, "What about your mom?" "Mom also likes Uncle Julian." As soon as these words came out, Ryan Miller's face turned completely dark. "How do you know?" Will looked straight ahead, his tone extremely firm. "Mom always smiles at Uncle Julian. Mom doesn't look happy when looking at you. Besides, when they act, they even kiss on the lips." Speaking of this, Will became excited again. "Dad, tell me, will Mom give me a little sister or little brother? I prefer a little sister." Ryan Miller's car suddenly braked to the side of the road. He frowned and turned around, his face pale. "What did you say?" Will blinked. "Will Mom give me a little sister or a little brother?" "Chloe told me that kissing on the lips makes you pregnant. If you're pregnant, you can birth a little sister." Will was secretly delighted, completely oblivious to the wounded Ryan Miller beside him. The days Will was at school, there wasn't a moment of peace. Every time I rested and picked up my phone, I could see the long voice messages the boy had sent me, his childish voice sharing his kindergarten life with me. "Mom, breakfast at school today was instant noodles. Will doesn't like it. Sister Olivia's noodles are still better. Chloe brought strawberry cake that her mom made for me today. It was so sweet. Chloe also said she'll invite you to eat next time. Today, it was the assistant uncle who picked me up from school again. Everyone else has their parents pick them up. Will is a little jealous of them. Mom, it would be so nice if you could also pick Will up from school." Hearing this, my nose tingled. I replied to each message one by one. "Sister Olivia says she misses you very much. Next time you come, she'll make you wontons. Thank Chloe for Mom, okay? Wait until Mom finishes filming this movie. I'll come to Los Angeles to pick you up from school. Don't be sad, Will. Mom also really wants to pick Will up from school," etc. Every time Will came over, Ryan Miller personally picked him up and dropped him off. This picking up and dropping off lasted for half a month. And when he was free, he would often hang around the film crew. So free that even Will found it a bit strange. Secretly pulling him aside to ask him, "Dad, are you about to go bankrupt?" Ryan Miller was speechless. The words he was about to say choked back. Will continued, worrying aloud, "Dad, I think you really have no chance left. If you go bankrupt, then you're old and have no money and a bad temper too. You definitely won't be a match for Uncle Julian." Ryan Miller choked, snorting lightly in anger. But changing his train of thought, Will asked, "Do you want Dad and Mom to be together?" Will was silent for a moment, nodded, then shook his head. "Mom isn't happy being with you. Better not." "So do you want Uncle Julian to be your new dad?" Will thought again, squatting down dejectedly to the side and shaking his head. "Don't want that either. Chloe said if I have a new dad and Mom gives birth to a new baby, she won't love me as much. I don't want Mom to not love me. But I also don't want Mom to be unhappy," etc. This film wrapped in late December. After filming ended, I returned to Los Angeles. Ryan Miller decisively abandoned all his business as a boss and brought Will over. As soon as he stepped through the door, Will's eyes lit up. "Mom, is this our house?" That evening, after bathing until he was fragrant and clean, Will scrambled onto my bed. "Mom, Will is so happy." I gently rubbed the boy's head. "Mommy is also very happy." As soon as I finished speaking, the doorbell rang. I stood up to check the security camera and just happened to see Ryan Miller leaning weakly against the door. I thought for a moment, then still opened the door. As soon as I opened it, I saw him with his head down, his eyes red. "Emma Collins, Will is lost."
Just as I was about to say he wasn't lost, his tall figure came crashing down. I quickly caught him and, with that catch, ended up embracing him completely. The overwhelming smell of alcohol hit my face, making me frown in disgust as I patted his back. "Stand up." He held me even tighter, refusing to let go no matter what. Will heard the commotion and hurriedly put on his fuzzy slippers, shuffling out. Ryan Miller, at 6'3", though he looked thin, worked out year-round and was quite heavy. It took the two of us, mother and son, using every ounce of strength to help him onto the sofa. "Mummy will go make Daddy some hangover soup. You watch over Daddy for a bit, okay?" Will nodded obediently and sat down next to Ryan Miller. Looking at him sleeping like the dead, Will poked Ryan Miller's stomach in annoyance. "Mummy's sweet-smelling home has all been made stinky by Daddy." Hearing this, Ryan Miller couldn't help but open one eye halfway to look at Will, grinding his teeth in anger. Seeing this, Will's eyes lit up as he turned to look at the kitchen. He carefully leaned close to Ryan Miller's ear and said in a hushed voice, "Daddy, I know you're faking being drunk." Ryan Miller turned his head away, frowning and ignoring Will. Will climbed on top of him and turned his head back. "If Daddy buys me the aircraft carrier Lego set, I won't tell Mummy." Ryan Miller turned his head away again, forcing out an from his throat. The entire evening, Will was excessively attentive. He fed Ryan Miller water, then washed his face. Except for when feeding him water, he also accidentally soaked Ryan Miller's shirt. When washing his face, he also smacked his biological father's nose. It hurt so much that Ryan Miller frowned and groaned. After Will went to sleep, I looked at Ryan Miller lying flat on the sofa and could only shake my head helplessly. I kicked his leg. "All right, stop pretending." He didn't budge, determined to keep up the drunk act to the end. I sat down next to him and said calmly, "Ryan Miller, 20-year-old Emma Collins might have fallen for your tricks, but I'm no longer that young girl from back then. So if you keep pretending, I'll throw you out." He raised his hand to rub his temples. He laughed softly. "Right, we can never go back." I slowly leaned back against the sofa and sighed. I was once very brave too, wasn't I? The old me had once given Ryan Miller a chance, had once trusted him, but I lost that bet. He laughed self-deprecatingly. "Yes, in the end, I was the most cowardly one. Grace Anderson dared to break off the engagement, dared to defy the elders and run abroad to pursue her freedom. You once also, for my sake, dared to refuse the Miller Mansion's threats, gave up everything, betting that I would choose you. But back then, I didn't choose you. Looking back now, I was truly despicable, not even human." I smiled and said, "That's right, you really weren't human. But I'm very grateful to you. Without you, back then, I probably wouldn't have had the courage to keep living. I also wouldn't be able to have the achievements I have today. But Ryan Miller, hitting a wall and bleeding really hurts. Someone like me doesn't have many good qualities, but I remember things for a long time. You taught me that too." When I first got together with Ryan Miller, the entertainment industry still barely knew who I was. The only impression of me was as a pretty good-looking acting student with some talent. I remember the first audition after breaking my contract, I encountered a licorice old man who said he wanted to test me privately and gave me a hotel room key. I was young then and holding back a lot of resentment, thinking I could probably handle it on my own strength, so I cheerfully went there. But unexpectedly, my drink was drugged. If it weren't for Ryan Miller, I don't know how badly I would have been humiliated. He took me to the hospital, pinched my cheek in extreme anger, his face dark as he asked me, "Have you learned your lesson?" Better to assume people are bad than to assume they are good. When you feel pain, remember it well. Otherwise, that pain is wasted, understand? Thinking of this, he lowered his head, his throat dry and burning. Very good. Being able to remember the pain well. Very good. Will's parent-teacher conference took place right before winter break. Calling it a parent-teacher conference, it was actually a parent-child class organized by the kindergarten. The night before going, Will was so excited he couldn't sleep, tossing and turning next to me. His little mouth kept smiling.
Mommy, tomorrow at kindergarten, everyone will definitely be so jealous of me. Jealous of what? Jealous that Mommy has an incredibly extraordinary money. So in the little boy's eyes, I was incredibly extraordinary. Aside from my fans, it had been a long time since I received such sincere praise from anyone else. I hugged the little boy close, inevitably feeling a bit greedy in my heart. How wonderful it would be if Will could stay by my side forever. Will nuzzled against me, calling out sweetly, "Mommy, I saw Mommy at the kindergarten gate before." I was a bit surprised, opening my mouth wide. Will continued, "Mommy was wearing a mask and hat, but I just knew it was Mommy because Mommy was always looking at Will." "Mommy, was I not mistaken?" I held Will closer. Yes, Mommy was always there. In previous years, Will was raised by Ryan's mom and dad at the Miller Mansion, so I had very few chances to see Will. It wasn't until later when Will came to Los Angeles with Ryan Miller to attend kindergarten. When I didn't have work scheduled, I would occasionally blend into the crowd of parents picking up kids at the kindergarten to watch the little boy from afar. When I bought this house in Los Angeles, it was also because this place was very close to Will's kindergarten. But I didn't dare let the boy know. In my heart, I was also afraid that the boy would also feel that I didn't need him, and also afraid that he would say with his own mouth, "You're not my mother." Fortunately, my child was raised very, very well. Early in the morning, Will had already woken up and started preparing. He kept looking at himself in the mirror. I don't even know who he learned this vain personality from. Seeing me standing behind him, laughing at him, Will's face reddened with a bit of embarrassment. "Mom, can you put some white powder on me?" "Huh?" "Chloe's mom is also coming today. I want to dress up nicely." Hearing this, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Do you like Chloe that much?" Will nodded. "Before, when the kids at kindergarten made fun of me, only Chloe helped me. He even said he would share half of his mom with me. But I didn't accept. I told him I already have a mom. If I accepted someone else as my mom, later when my mom finds out, she'll be very sad. Chloe is a hero. He's always protected me at kindergarten, so I've already thought it through carefully. When I grow up, I'll marry him. In Grandma's TV shows, this is called repaying with one's body." In the end, I applied a layer of children's moisturizing cream on Will, and Will looked at himself in the mirror extremely satisfied. Sure enough, fair and smooth. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I originally thought that Ryan Miller wouldn't come today, but as soon as Will and I had just finished getting ready and were preparing to go downstairs, I saw his car parked at the door. Seeing this, Will was overjoyed, holding my hand with one hand and Ryan Miller's hand with the other. At the kindergarten gate, his head was raised even higher. He told everyone he saw, "Look, I have a mom now." Seeing this, Ryan Miller felt a bit unbalanced inside. "Why don't you say you have a dad?" Will let go of his hand. "Mom is a superstar. Dad is just an ordinary person. What's there to brag about?" Ryan Miller was both annoyed and amused. Living this long, no one had ever called him an ordinary person. He slowly followed behind Will and I. Will led me to meet Chloe and Chloe's mom. Only unexpectedly, Chloe's mom was actually a fan of my films. Seeing me, she was so happy she almost jumped up. The parent-child class was the last class of the semester. Will played very happily. After summer break, the boys stayed with me for a while. Before the new year, Ryan Miller took Will back to New York. When leaving, Will was on the verge of tears, rarely acting like other normal children throwing a tantrum. Ryan Miller had no choice but to directly pick up and carry the boy to the car. In the car, after Will had cried his heart out, he started getting upset. "Dad, if it weren't for you being so useless, Mom could have come back to New York with us for the new year." Ryan Miller stayed silent for a long time. "Do you want Mom and Dad to live together?" The boy lowered his head and softly said, "Yes," then sighed, his heart tangled with something unknown. Ryan Miller rarely patiently explained to the boy, "Dad and Mom have to be apart. One reason is, like you said before, Dad was too useless, not brave enough. And another reason is your grandpa and grandma don't like Mom. Even though Dad is useful now, Grandpa and Grandma still don't like Mom. If Mom came back to New York for the new year, she would have to suffer grievances. Will scrunched up his face. How can we make Grandpa and Grandma like Mom? Want to know? I'll tell you. And so, on the very first night back in New York, Will ran to his grandparents' room carrying his pillow. He slept between them, sighing deeply, tossing and turning restlessly. The two grandparents asked the boy what was wrong. Will scrunched up his face. Grandma, why do other people only have one dad, but I have two dads? The two grandparents didn't understand what the boy was saying, frowning at each other in confusion. Will sighed again. Daddy was holding another man's hand, and they were hugging too. Daddy told me to call that man Daddy as well. Daddy also said he would stay with that man forever. As soon as these words were spoken, the two elders were so horrified they couldn't sleep peacefully, tossing and turning all night long. The next day, they came with dark circles under their eyes. In the living room, they stared at Ryan Miller with wide eyes and asked, "What exactly does this man Will mentioned mean?" Ryan Miller's expression didn't change as he ate breakfast and replied, "Oh, him? He's my son's new little boyfriend. When I have time someday, I'll bring him over to pay New Year's respects to you both." Ryan's dad was so angry his eyes went dark, and he immediately fell over. Ryan Miller watched Ryan's dad get so provoked he fainted, and sighing helplessly. "Dad, stop pretending. Your health is as strong as an ox." Ryan's dad, provoked to anger, immediately cursed out several sentences. "You unfilial descendant, rebellious son!" Ryan Miller didn't bother paying attention to him. Ryan's mom kept regretting and scolding Ryan's dad. "Back then, who told you to always meddle in other people's business, criticizing this and that? Now look what's happened. You found yourself another son to bring home. If the Miller mansion continues like this, you might as well say you've brought glory to the ancestors." New Year's Eve night, I had just finished my phone call with my parents. Will's video call came through. The little boy happily and excitedly shared with me the plate of wontons he had wrapped himself. Just as the video ended, the doorbell rang. I stood up and looked through the peephole, originally thinking it was Olivia and Ava, but unexpectedly it was Ryan Miller. Dazed, I opened the door, and he walked in without any formality. I stood frozen in place, stunned. "Aren't you supposed to be in New York?" He looked at me with a smirk. "I came to celebrate New Year's with you." I hadn't fully processed this yet. I casually said, "Oh." He placed hot food on the table, went straight to the wine cabinet, and opened a bottle of wine. I couldn't help but laugh at his casual manner. "You're really making yourself at home." As he uncorked the wine, he looked at me. "We even have a child together. What's with the formality? Even if you don't cherish our past, you should at least appreciate that I flew all the way from New York to celebrate New Year's with you." I clicked my tongue. "How come I never noticed before that you had such thick skin?" That night, we told each other many, many stories from the past. After drinking for a while, we were slightly drunk. A grown man and woman, young and vigorous, alone in a room together, with alcohol involved, it was inevitable that something happened. When I woke up the next morning, I angrily kicked Ryan Miller straight off the bed. "Do you have no shame? At your age, still learning to climb into people's beds?" Ryan Miller slowly stood up, a roguish smile on his lips. "Clearly you kissed me first, and now you're crying thief while being the thief?" I snorted coldly and kicked his leg again. "Get up and change the sheets for me." He said okay. In the bathroom, I leisurely took a thorough shower. Carefully thinking back, it seems I really did make the first move, but I didn't feel there was anything wrong with that. A 30-year-old having some needs is perfectly normal. Besides, Ryan Miller had always kept himself in very good shape. I didn't pay it much mind, but Ryan Miller did. All day long, he kept hovering in front of me trying to get attention, and occasionally, thick-facedly, asked if he needed him to serve me. I always coldly told him to get lost. The older one gets, the thicker the skin becomes. Ryan Miller somehow started believing in that principle. Hitting means caring, scolding means loving. After a brief New Year, the new film crew started production again. As soon as Will returned, he broke off relations with Ryan Miller because he had secretly come back to celebrate New Year's with me without bringing the little boy along. He even swore he would never play with him for the rest of his life. But when Ryan Miller brought the latest edition Lego set to apologize, the little guy was back to running after him, calling out, "Daddy is the best." Ryan Miller still occasionally hung around the film crew. At the slightest hint of movement, he'd show his face. Will evaluated this behavior of his as being a lapdog. When Ryan Miller found out, he was so angry he could barely breathe. I don't know why, but somehow having those two, father and son, around didn't feel too bad. So I always turned a blind eye. Still filming my movie as usual, not missing any scenes that should be filmed. But Ryan Miller once got drunk and actually cried and demanded I give him a proper status. I refused, domineering as I said, "Getting married will affect my career. I'm still young. If you want to follow me, then follow. If you don't want to, then leave. Don't hover around in front of me." He was left completely speechless.